Mr. Regulation, Rick Peri, AEA's man in Washington, a guy we've talked to, I mean, all 15 years that we've done this live. So. Yeah, you've been a regular. I don't think we've ever missed you. And God knows we've been aiming. Washington right now is intriguing,
yes.
Which is a nice way of saying, what a mess. Last time I talked to Billy Nolan, I had no idea he was about ready to say enough, and I understand not only enough, but enough. I hope he lasts at least through Oshkosh, because he had a ball there. I know he's talking about this summer, and he really enjoyed himself. But we had a guy who knew how to do the job, and for some reason or another didn't get to do it. And I don't know. What's before we get specific, what are your thoughts on Washington these days, and what's happening with the FAA?
Well,
keep it clean.
Well, I think we all were taken by surprise with the administrator, the acting administrator's notice that came out that he was leaving in the summer. It's a challenging time. We don't have an administrator. It's hard to operate without the figurehead at the top. But unlike every other time, and I say that because we've been through this a few times.
Oh yeah, this is a comedy
new.
show.
But in this particular time, I would say that the FAA had been operating in a very sound, ruddered environment. As you know, Billy was in fact AVS1 and acting as administrator. AFX1 was acting as AVS1, and so you have people, not past tense yet, you have people who have a vested interest in the policies and procedures and practices. We haven't always had that in the acting roles before. Quite often the acting role would be a parallel office and it was, rank for rank kind of thing, but not necessarily familiarity to familiarity. And so this particular last couple of years have really been pretty solid. In theory, we haven't had a leader. On the other hand, I would argue that we have had a leader. He just wasn't being paid for it. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, and I don't speculate on why, for whatever reason, Billy has chosen to step down. And I hope that, anybody they choose to replace him is in fact, again, in that process of having a passionate need for that job. I'm concerned because I would expect that AVS1 will be acting until we have an administrator to appoint AVS1, and that's going to create the top two tiers in a traditional acting role, and that's going to be challenging. And so I encourage the Senate to figure out who they want to have as the administrator and get him confirmed quickly and get an AVS.
It's such a bloody shame, because we went from competence and clarity to just massive question marks and weird decisions. With all due respect to Mr. Washington, who's got an interesting background and more important, great service to his country, but he wasn't an aviation guy. And that really presented a target. And the
I understand that.
Washington is nothing but whose target are you today?
Exactly.
And I get that, but they should have seen that coming.
There's a lot of things that, I look at and kind of chuckle a little bit and go, seriously, is that, where we were? Washington would not have been the first non-aviator.
No.
Okay? A dear friend of ours who did a really good job wasn't an aviator. Huerta, you know,
Michael was wonderful.
fantastic
Still is.
administrator.
Bring him back. I have no problem with that one at all.
Jane Garvey
Oh, stunning.
was not an aviator. And so...
And talk about being in the hot seat.
Exactly. And so, you know, there's a lot of this stuff that's like, oh, well, you know, it's not this or it's not that or it's not this. You know, being enlisted, you know, Washington's the kind of drill sergeant that you need to run an organization sometimes. And so...
Oh, man, the non-coms
You know,
run their organizations. I get all
yeah.
that.
And so...
But again,
But,
holy smokes.
however...
In this climate,
Well, and when you go into hearings, and you know, you're not even up to the Wall Street Journal, you know, that's embarrassing, and you know, shame on his handlers.
oh,
And you know, the people that prepared him,
there
because
wasn't anybody over there who's going to tell him what an ADSB was? Really?
I mean, there's just some basics that it was pretty disappointing.
And let's face it,
But-
everybody was telegraphing that.
Yeah, and so you know, but you know what? It is what it is. He's taken his name out of the hat, and you know, I hope that the Senate moves quickly and finds the new administrator, and we get back on an even keel. You know, and that's I mean.
And we need it now more than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, we're facing some really interesting challenges, regulatory, political, economic. The industry is changing. We've got some massive issues coming up. Pilot training in particular is one that I've got some real concerns about. And of course, all that being politicized when it shouldn't have been as well. And then everything helping out here. I mean, we need an FAA that functions well, serves well, and is going to get it done this year.
Well, and as you know, it's a reauthorization year. Okay.
And thank God for Sam Graves at least recognizing there is a GA.
Well, and I would offer that the chairman of the subcommittee, Graves, is also doing very well. Really appreciate that. But you know,
it's particularly difficult right now when we lost a real champion in Jim Inhofe when he retired.
We did, and I think that you know, we may see some issues with that. But we've got other champions in there. We've had turnover before. It's not the first time.
Yeah, I just hate to see the good guys drop out.
Well, they're entitled to retire sometime.
No, you're not.
And
I don't want to hear that word from you at all.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, okay. Just so we're clear.
I think that's been the I was telling some folks that, you know, following the Charles Taylor, that, you know, the first question everybody comes is, was that your announcement? No, it's not my announcement. I'm not retiring anytime soon. And, you know, nothing circled on the calendar. I have no idea what that date
is. Many
is.
years of putting you on the hot seat up here, buddy.
So, but no, I think the reauthorization is an important area, and to do the FAA reauthorization without an administrator is, to me, concerning. And to lose Mr. Nolan at this time, when the agency does need a spokesperson, does need somebody to represent them, does need to articulate the need for the agency's
and he was
resources.
Enthusiastic about the industry.
Oh, absolutely.
I love that. I mean,
he was bringing a lot of talent to the table.
Yeah.
But you know, it's going to be really important, especially in reauthorization, that the agency has that spokesperson who can truly represent the needs of the agency. I will tell you, Congress, if you've listened to any of the hearings, at almost every hearing, one of the representatives has said, what resources do you need for improvement? And without a spokesman, a spokesperson for the agency who can articulate those needs, those questions are going unanswered, and the agency is not getting the resources that Congress would like to give them so they could have continuous improvement in staffing, in equipment, in facilities, in all of the things that we as industry rely on to improve the aviation industry in a whole.
Well, we've got some interesting regulatory challenges coming up. One I know you're conversant with, and I've had a bunch of people ask me, when you see Rick, ask him what's happening with Mosaic, what's going on. And we're just sitting there going, okay, when we can find somebody who really knows what's going on with Mosaic, let him know we appreciate him being God and so forth and so on. But what can you tell us about this? Because it is pretty sweeping stuff, if it is everything we've been told it is going to be. But it didn't happen last year, may not happen this year, we just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell me?
Honestly, not a lot.
Well, that's you and everybody in Washington then.
Well, it's pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah.
It is in ex parte, if you will. It's behind the curtain. What we do know, and Mr. Bolter last year had actually put a timeline for the NPRM.
Yes.
Which all indications are is that NPRM date is still valid. Now, keeping in mind that Mosaic started with a specific focus, transitioned into this holy grail of everything we needed to deal with legacy airplanes and light sport airplanes and UAS and AAM, and we've got this engine, this rulemaking engine, if you will, and so we're going to pull this really long train with it. Well, as they started pulling that train a little bit, we started losing some of the cars. And so the last that I've heard anyway is that Mosaic is actually back closer to what the original intent was.
Really?
Okay.
That's good news.
Without a lot of the secondary baggage that was coming with it. Some of the legacy aircraft stuff has fallen off.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
But
that's not so good.
But they are addressing it in other ways.
Okay.
Okay. And so the last that I've really heard is that Mosaic is kind of that core focus of bringing light sport airplanes up a little bit, adding some safety features into it, recognizing safety features weigh, and so we've increased the weight a little bit. So we're really getting a lot of the tools in place for light general aviation and entry-level general aviation that should really help the system. Some of the legacy aircraft initiatives that were kind of being thrown around a little bit, some of those dropped off very early in the process anyway, and I've not heard that they've come back on.
Okay.
And so I'm not anticipating anything. But having said that, all of those train cars, if you will, that were tagged on to Mosaic, those still have to come through rulemaking. And so we have Mosaic, but in a lot of ways, I'm expecting a secondary Mosaic 2.0.
Yeah, a lot of tag-alongs?
To address, won't be part of that rulemaking, but we will have a separate rulemaking to deal with modernization of certification for drones and electric VTOL.
Okay.
And that's just a speculation on my part. I haven't seen anything on the DOT docket to indicate that, but there is some rulemaking that has to take place in order to facilitate the operational uses of some of these additional aircraft. Okay. As an example, you've got some basic language in Part 135 that talks about the pilot. Well, it's not really compatible with an autonomous aircraft. And so they're adjusting that a little bit. We have 135 air cargo operations with micro aircraft. How do you like that one?
Yeah.
And so we have regulations about that, but we have to have exemptions because these micro aircraft don't have direct pilots. And so in order to do the air cargo operations with these aircraft, we have to have exemptions to 135. So wherever we see an exemption, we can anticipate a rulemaking at some point.
Oh boy. May you live in interesting times. Isn't that the old Chinese curse?
Well, and the thing is that it's important for us, okay, to recognize air cargo operations are air cargo operations are air cargo operations. All right? I don't care. You could be flying a 747 transoceanic full of cargo, or you can be flying a drone with 6 kilos. It doesn't matter. It's still air cargo operations. And, you know, we can call these micro aircraft drones just like we can call the light aircraft LSA. Mm-hmm. But they're just aircraft. And if we understand, we have 100 years of a performance-based system that has taken us from the Wright brothers to electric autonomous aircraft, okay? And our performance regulations have done that phenomenally well, better than anywhere in the world. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater.
And the future right now is a quagmire.
No, it's not.
Oh, sure it is.
No, absolutely
not.
not.
They're proposing new technologies, left, right, and forward. We don't know which one's going to work. Everything's getting funded. Everything's being tried. And I can't even conceive of the regulatory nightmare we'll deal with 10 years from now.
Jim, this is the best of times.
Well, that too, but...
Okay.
I'm not saying it isn't fun, but at the same time, holy smokes, the stuff I'm seeing being proposed, much less being tested, is extraordinary.
So what?
Really?
Do you think when they went from the DC-3 to the first pressurized airplane that they didn't think they were crazy? When they went from round motors
but they were.
to jet engine.
But it worked.
You know, well, but this is the whole thing is that we're living in a time right now. So realizing, so Charles Taylor, and for those that don't know, Charles Taylor built the first aviation engine. Charles Taylor died in 1956. So he brought us from a handmade 4-cylinder engine
Yep.
to the very beginning of the jet age.
Okay.
Okay? Now, how many crazy, silly, unbelievable designs do we have in the history books?
More than we can count.
World War I,
Yeah.
World War II, right?
Yep.
And some of them succeeded, some of them didn't. But the beauty we have today, and today we are going from, you know, my career, I started with round motors, tube type radios, and sextants for navigation, okay?
The good old days.
And today, we have electric propulsion, distributed lift. We have three type certificated autonomous aircraft,
Okay.
and we have AI on the verge.
Oh, let's...
But people don't realize we have 3 type certificated, people moving autonomous aircraft.
And now comes the societal change of getting people to accept it.
Garmin Autoland.
Yep.
When you push that button, that aircraft becomes
An autonomous vehicle.
Okay?
Of course.
And so when you look at this, we are living in the most fantastic of times. If you look at the technology that you use on a daily basis, and the fact that we're transitioning this technology into aircraft, into automation, into autonomy, I'm excited.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Let's address current regulatory challenges for the avionics industry. What are the targets right now? What are the things that are keeping people up at night, or for that matter, creating the most consternation for the immediate future?
Interestingly enough, we actually have the beginning of a conversation here shortly. It has to do with automation and electronics.
Okay.
So as we know, our regulatory system dates back to 1926, okay? And a lot of the maintenance regulations, they date back to Bulletin 7, pre-CAA, CAR 18 through the CAA. But there's one little element to this, and that is the repair and alteration of instruments.
Okay.
Because of electronics, the cockpit of the modern aircraft is arguably an electronic instrument. Okay?
Agreed.
Part 65 prohibits mechanics from repairing or altering instruments.
Okay. I see where you're going.
Okay? So you have an iPad.
Always. Surgically attached.
Apple sends you over Bluetooth, over Wi-Fi. Apple sends you an OS update. What are you on, about 16 now? 18? You know?
Something like that, yeah.
Right? What does that OS do
With
to
luck,
your iPad?
With luck, it works.
Okay, with luck it works.
Yes.
But what does it do to your iPad?
Hopefully increased functionality.
Oh, is that an alteration?
Oh boy. You had to go there, didn't you?
I did. or they identified a defect that they corrected. Isn't that a repair?
Oh boy.
As a result of that, we're beginning the conversation about the modern instruments and the legacy language of what a repair and alteration is in the modern era. Because historically, when the regulations were written, we took an instrument out of the shop, out of the airplane, took it back to the shop, had to actually disassemble it to repair it, or we had to disassemble it to alter it. But today in the electronic world, I can do that simply with software.
It's
And
not
so-
like the old days where basically your soldering skills got you your job.
Right.
Now it's your programming skills.
Exactly, and
Oh, man.
so these are the
God help us all.
conversations that we have to have. Now, from a legacy perspective, we have the primary flight display, the multifunction display, the EFIS. Then we get into the transitional products of electronic autopilots, and obviously this integrated aircraft in Garmin's Autoland. And then that's going to springboard us into the conversation about how do we do this when the entire aircraft is a computer. And so these are the conversations that we have to be prepared for tomorrow to prevent actually what you just talked about, this regulatory quagmire of reacting to technology. We want to be in front of technology.
Oh, good
And
luck.
so as this floor
that
demonstrates,
takes a hell of a crystal ball, my friend.
well, this floor demonstrates, okay?
Yes.
And what we have to do, AEA has to do, is stay in front of this technology to make sure the regulations
Yeah, but that's what we got
support
you
it.
for.
That's why I'm not
No
going
problem.
anywhere.
There you go.
I'm not done yet.
Let me switch up on you a little bit.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk, especially in the transition from pandemic to post-pandemic, the fact that there were a lot of people lost to the job market, hopefully by choice and not by tragedy. Retraining, rehiring, trying to find folks where they're coming from. Training the avionics industry for the next decade has become a major challenge. And a matter of fact, one of the answers that I'm real pleased with, we're talking to apparently a friend of yours, Patrick McManus, with the Next Stop program, which
Yep.
of course is trying to place veterans. Yay.
Yep. Agreed.
And that's part of a much bigger problem. How do you see is the industry really well equipped to evaluate, well, first to train, two to evaluate, and three to support the technicians and engineers and programmers and all the support personnel that we're going to need in an industry that is not going to go away anytime soon?
Correct. And the answer is yes. Okay.
How?
Well, so
You gave me the easy one.
I know.
I'm going to give you the hard one.
okay,
How?
fine. Well, you just asked yes or no. So, one of the things that gets lost in the noise is that 145 repair stations, Part 145 repair stations, have the ability to bring in subject matter experts,
Okay.
not necessarily aviators,
Gotcha.
but subject matter experts, and in very short order put them to work,
All right.
because the work is being done by the repair station. Unlike a light GA shop where the work is being done by a Part 65 certificated person.
Okay.
Part 145 has tools in it that we have not utilized to their fullest. So if you go into 145 and you take it literally, the certification of people, which is what the real challenge is actually a minority within the 145. The 145 has the ability to bring in subject matter experts to qualify them for specific tasks and put them to work.
Okay.
So what it's going to do is as you explain the challenge we face, the challenge we face is like any other challenge. We have to go into the toolbox, find out what tools we have that we haven't been utilizing, use those tools to satisfy our needs. And I think it's going to work well. If you go to AEA's website, we have a Department of Labor endorsed apprentice program for avionics. Okay? Great. My best recruiting is from the Geek Squad. I can teach them what the pointy end is, and I can teach them what the fat end is.
Okay.
But they come in as a subject matter expert on digital communications, on digital operations, on configuration control, and all of those things that take so long to teach. And then the apprentice program bridges the gap from a civilian SME to an aviator SME. And we do it in-house under the repair station training program, and we've got the tools in place. This is how we will survive through this next generation. Now, keeping in mind, every time we have 3.4% unemployment, we have this same conversation.
Oh boy. Yeah,
And
true.
unfortunately, as unemployment starts to rise, we will find that people are willing to do technical schools and go back and use some of the traditional tools to come back into the network. But we just don't have that. And right now, because unemployment is so low, recruitment into a 2-year commitment to a school is so challenging, we have to grow our own.
Okay.
AEA has an apprentice program, Department of Labor endorsed for avionics. We also have the guidance for an apprentice program for A&P on our website.
Okay.
We have both of those to help the small businesses who bring that person that has an interest but can't afford school, has an interest but the nearest school is 2 states away. They can bring them into the shop. And just like a lot of us learned by experience, bring them in, nurture them, and we have the guidance to walk them through the process.
Final question, or final series of questions. If you had to give a report card to this industry on its overall performance as compared to the performance of those factors that we're dependent upon, FAA and likewise in the political environment, How are we doing?
We're doing well.
Really?
I mean, we're doing well. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that.
Don't know that I'd do A+, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Certainly high B or low A.
Okay.
But mind you, I also would give the FAA high marks.
Oh, now you're going to get into trouble with some people here.
No, because all things considered, I think they're doing a good job. Now, politically, that's a whole different thing. Politics of the FAA don't translate to the field, okay? It's what we live in,
Yeah.
right? But it doesn't really translate to the field. Now, what happens at the field level is we've got a lot of turnover, just like we have turnover in industry.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing is that most new employees are sponges. They want to learn. Our challenge is to provide the learning.
Okay.
I don't want to tell them how to do their job. I want to help them do their job better. And so we provide the information, the knowledge, avionics news, pages of Aero-News. It's important for us to provide clarity so that when we get these new employees, whether they're on their side or our side, that we're all learning to the same standard. And you know, we've been working on that for a long time with avionics news.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've been working on that for a long time with Aero-News. And it puts a burden on us because we are very rapidly becoming educators.
Honest, you guys have been doing a phenomenal job.
You know?
And you know me and my attitude, if I didn't think you were, I'd be telling you, and
sure,
you'd be decking me right here on live TV.
But we've got an industry that is, I mean, you know, you look at the diversity of new technologies here, okay?
Big time.
And it's like, okay, and it's the creativity. It's, you know, this is the stuff that we used to see in the hangars of Oshkosh 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That this amount of creativity, and now we're seeing it in this environment for two reasons. One is we've clarified PMA, okay, so that parts certification is more straightforward. We being the FAA, have also come up with ways to approve simpler parts. The NORC policy, which is a production approval. NORC has it's a simple PMA, if you will, for simple parts. Okay, you know, those tools is what helps make this floor what it is. And so I give credit where credit's due. You know, politically, I want to see them get their act together.
Amen
at the field level, you know, and I'll tell you, you know, one of the big issues with our members, especially the applicants in the world, is this thing called CSOP, right? Mm-hmm. Driving everybody nuts. A year ago, at this show, when the FAA reported they had 700 applicants in the queue. Mm-hmm. Yesterday they reported 274. Now, mind you, that is not 145.
Okay.
That is all air agency applicants other than air carrier applicants under 121.
Okay.
So there's 200, so they have reduced the backload by 2/3. That's pretty impressive.
They got to help the rest of them.
And they're not done. Well, but they're moving them faster. They didn't anticipate having the backlog cleared out until the end of this year. And being 2/3 the way lower this far into the year,
progress.
I have faith that they in fact are going to get better. We're working with them on risk-based approach to surveillance, risk-based approach to certification, simplification processes, and so all of this will reduce the backlog for the agency so that they can spend more quality time doing surveillance and those things that Congress kind of expects them to do.
There you go. Rick, I got to tell you, there's never enough time. The joke I have is there's no such thing as a short conversation with Rick Peri, which is not a complaint, by the way, because it's always education and I always get a kick out of it. And frankly, we really should talk more, especially as we go into a couple of programs into the future and so forth. You're AEA's man in Washington. One thing I did want to mention was not only have you been effective there, but you were recently honored just this week with the Charles Taylor Award. That's an extraordinary singular honor. I'm so pleased for you.
Thank you.
And in no uncertain terms, I'd have voted for you. So,
Thank you.
Rick, thank you for spending time with Airborne and Aero-News, and of course the 66th Annual AEA Convention and Trade Show, our 15th year live, and we'll see you for the next 15 years.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 66th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Orlando, Florida, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors: